Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of America's favorite podcast, really the world's favorite podcast, the Unclassified podcast. I am your host, Ben Wheeler, also known as America's Mayor, and I'm joined, as always, with teen heartthrob Preston Stewart. And today we're talking about so much. We're talking about Minneapolis, and we're talking about Iran. We also have a lot of questions from the viewers, and we may have a rug update in the middle of this. So I have been looking for a rug. I'm going to put it up on screen right now. And I am looking for earnest opinions on this rug. Everyone I talk to split. You either love it or you hate it. I've been told it's the right amount of Elton John, which feels like a certain way of saying something else. But I love Elton John. So to me, I took it as, well, yeah, hell yeah, dude, right? So
I don't think that was a comment about the rug. If, that's probably the direction people are taking it.
Right. Well, so I like it. I think I want it for my apartment, but I am genuinely seeking for people to talk me out of it because everyone I hear talk about it, they say that's not for a 28-year-old's apartment. And I go, but maybe it is. Maybe it is for America's Mayor. But Preston, after we got off the line on Saturday, you texted me. You said another execution has happened in Minnesota. And I thought, ay caramba, what is going on here? And then we both saw what transpired here. Do you want to give the viewers, I don't think they necessarily need a recap. I think everyone in America and around the world knows exactly what happened. But are there any comments or remarks you'd like to give before we get into the rigmarole?
Yeah. I was kind of batting around whether or not to make a video about this or address this or talk about it, however, and decided that it was appropriate to say something. So it did at the end of a YouTube video. It's not, look, this isn't my forte. There's people out there that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, I have no background in law enforcement in any way, shape or form. I've never been arrested. So all of this is not, you can have people pick apart frame by frame. A lot of people much better suited to do that than me. And I'm sure you've probably seen their takes at this point. I just think it's getting out of hand. In my personal opinion, I think both of these people were unjustly killed in Minneapolis over the course of the last couple of weeks. And the thing that stood out to me, just kind of coming from the space that we spend a lot of time in, is how the government framed it in the immediate aftermath. For one, how about just an investigation? Just do that. And I think we have a question we're going to get to here in a minute about what what happened if something like this happened in a war zone. An investigation, you just do that, and it doesn't matter. You don't go into it assuming one thing or another. An investigation does not mean that somebody is going to be criminally liable at the end of it. You do an investigation to find out if proper procedures were followed, and sometimes proper procedures are followed, and it results in a negative outcome. So the reason you do the investigation is to piece all of that together. So that should be a no-brainer across the board to investigate when an American citizen is killed by U.S. government officials. It should be pretty simple to get to that point. I'd like to see that. It sounds like that might be happening in one of these, at least in one of these cases. But something that stood out to me was the framing of the incident in the immediate aftermath, referring to these folks as terrorists, citing everything that's happening as paid outside agitators. That is the type of language, exact language that we're hearing from Iran right now in these protests. And we're covering the Iran stuff and laughing and saying, this is absurd. It's ridiculous. Look at how they're presenting their own citizens. And it was pretty hard to see that. And then to see enough people stand by that. I mean, those words were coming from the top. What are we doing here? We've talked about this how many times on this channel? How about just say, we'll get back to you. This is an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing investigation. But to see the government come out that quickly and that harshly against American citizens, I think this is a problem. That's awful. That's not at all what should be happening. And I hope we can turn this ship around pretty quick, because it's heading in a bad direction. There hasn't been, from what I've seen, violent reaction to either one of these. Again, I'm not as dialed in as people that are covering this day in and day out, but I think that's fortunate. And the more violence we see, it's just going to inspire more and more. And it is the kind of thing that can get out of control. So let's get our hands around this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head. My view of things is well, look, I think these guys are lawless thugs. I think they have no training. They have exactly 47 days of training. That is a ICE decision they made to flatter the 47th president. They're lawless thugs. Many of them haven't even passed background checks. They're kind of just tossing anybody out there. I have a buddy who is with the state police in Minnesota. He says every single one of these guys is a jabroni. He said there are some who are skilled, some who are veterans, but for the most part, these guys out here, they couldn't even serve with Paul Blart. You know who Paul Blart is? Like the mall cop?
Yeah.
I think you were in Afghanistan when that came out, but it was a great movie. Anyways, so it these guys, it's unbelievable. And these patrols they're doing, I think, are so antithetical to what it means to be an American and how we've conducted ourselves for literally 250 years now, which is they walk down the streets and they ask everyone for their papers. I'm sorry, pardon my French, but you can get fucked. We're not a papers, please society. We've never been a papers, please society. And what do you mean, show me your papers? Because they say driver's license aren't enough to prove it. Your real ID isn't enough to prove it. Is it a passport? Some people with passports have been detained and brought into detention. Do I have to carry around my birth certificate? Maybe, but what if these hillbillies can't read? Certainly a cause for concern. It's absolutely out of line and it's insane. And I was happy to see that Greg Bovino, as you may know him from his time in Chicago where he lied to a federal judge. Many people don't even know. The Chicago stuff kind of fell under the radar because I think something else insane was going on at the time. I can't exactly jog my memory. But when they were in Chicago, they were just tear gassing entire neighborhoods. And a federal judge put in a stop on the tear gassing. And she said, it's out of line, it's too much. That weekend then, literally the next day, they violate the court order and they fire tear gas again. And they lied to her and they say, we didn't deploy tear gas. Literally, no, she was living on the street that they fired tear gas on. So, and as a federal judge said just the other day, ICE has broken the law and court orders something like 68 times in the past 18 days. That is more than most federal agencies have broken in their entire existence. It's absurd. They're out of line. It's lawlessness, and there needs to be a crackdown. Now, I was pleased to see Trump fire Greg Bovino like a dog, but there's still a lot to happen. You know, he is in charge of CBP, who is by far the most aggressive of any federal agency. And people say, well, you know, they're not really used to this. They're usually at the border, yada, yada, yada. Fair. True enough. But they need to go back to the border. And this post 9/11 thing we've set up where the border is actually everywhere 100 miles from the actual border rather than the southern and the northern border is nonsense, right? Nobody actually believes that Chicago's within 100 miles of the border. And nobody actually believes that Atlanta's within 100 miles of the border. Nobody believes that Philadelphia is, okay? It's just, you know, it's not. It's not. So I was pleased to see him get fired, and now he's brought in Tom Homan to man ICE operations. And I disagree with Tom Homan on a lot. What I will say is I do think he takes pride in what he does. I do think perhaps I don't agree on his methods, but I do believe he will attempt to get this under control. But still, a lot more has to be done, right? We need reassurances. Right now, the government's partially shut down over this. We'll see what actually comes to be. But the Senate Dems need to crack the whip here. And if it means shutting down DHS funding, that's what has to happen. But nobody should be under illusions here. ICE is funded through 2029 through the One Big Beautiful Bill. So there's nothing you can... A government shutdown is not going to defund ICE. But you can force concessions out of the White House, and they do seem to be open to that. We have seen Republican senators side with Senate Dems on this. It seems to be becoming more of a bipartisan issue, or at least a wedge issue. And so, you know, the masks have to go. They have to have ID, and you need assurances they're not going to be at polling places. I just read a study that says one traffic stop makes someone 30% less likely to vote. So, I mean, look, change has to come to America, and the anger in Minnesota is palpable. And I've seen people try to compare it to, you know, 1930s Germany. I've seen people try to compare it to Italy, and after the Allies invaded. I don't think any of those comparisons actually work. I think the only comparison works is the most American of all the comparisons, and that is 1770s Boston. And if you recall, I told you this on Saturday, Preston. General Gage, he was the royal governor at the time in Massachusetts, warned King George that the rebellion that was brewing, that the issue that was happening on the streets of Boston could not be put down through more troops because the occupation itself was becoming the source of anger, right? Rather than the Stamp Act or the Tea Act. Well, those were certainly upsetting to people. They were not the source of anger. In fact, it was the presence of troops and the abuses that the troops were subjecting people to. And so King George said, well, I won Boston 3 times and they stole it from me. And the rest is history, right? But if perhaps King George had listened to General Gage, we're not celebrating 250 years here. So it is something to keep in mind. It definitely mirrors 1770s Boston. There's just a lot of anger in the streets, and the federal government is rightfully being given hell. It's just a matter of, will they fully draw down, or will they only talk like they're being drawn down? But if you listen to these senators out of Minnesota, things have not changed on the ground. Maybe the rhetoric, but things have not changed.
Yeah, I mean, I look, get rid of the criminals on the street. We should have safe streets. We should not have violent offenders from other countries that are here illegally. Like, get rid of them 100%. I think there's been a lot of bad faith debates in this space. Like, I don't know anybody that's arguing that we should have bad people illegally here in the United States committing crimes. Get them out 100%. If the only way we can do that is by illegally detaining American citizens and holding them against their constitutional rights, then we probably need to stop and take a break and find another way to do this. And if we get to the point where Americans are being killed in the pursuit of these goals, then 100% we need to pause and find out what needs to be done differently, because neither one of those are acceptable. And it's just moving up the ladder of just, I mean, there's your sign, like something, you have to find a different way. The goal might be viable and understandable, but if we're pursuing the wrong means of getting to it, like, then there needs to be just stop, take a break, reassess what's a better way to go about doing this, because the current path we're on is not acceptable.
And I mean, you're 100% right. And I feel like this is often getting missed if you just started tuning in when Pretty was killed. The clashes happening in Minneapolis, the clashes that were happening in Chicago are not, it's really transcended immigration and undocumented people versus documented and criminals or whatever. This is a conflict 100% started because ICE is harassing U.S. citizens, right? That is the core of the conflict. It's not U.S. citizens trying to protect undocumented people or people who are criminals who have removal orders. This is 100% ICE started this with citizens. They won't stop bothering the citizens, and the citizens are now responding, and they don't necessarily like that, right? So, so I agree with you. If someone has a removal order, they're a violent criminal, they got to go, right? I mean, we can debate along the margins of like someone like Donna Khashoggi, came out of Ohio. Remember that story from earlier in the year? She was an Iranian woman, came here in 78, right before the Iranian Revolution. They were like, well, you can just exist in this limbo status here, right? Because you can't apply for citizenship here, whatever, And so she started a whole family. She's been here for 30, 40 years. And then they come and they get her in the morning and they go to deport her. And they needed like congressional intervention to be like, are you out of your mind? You're going to send her back to a country that is fundamentally different than the one she left 50 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So, I mean, we can debate along those margins, but I think everyone agrees that violent criminals, people with removal orders can go. But this harassment of U.S. citizens, the thing that's the core of the conflict, needs to stop, because if they keep it up, it's going to be an issue. I have seen people, though, they say they're going to Philadelphia next. And on a lighter note, the responses online have been pretty funny about that. Really? I've seen Philadelphia saying, well, ICE is going to be protesting us, man. I've seen people saying that ICE is not ready for Philadelphia. I think they're probably right. That DA is talking a big game, too, which cracks me up. He says he's going to arrest all of them. I love these big city DAs. You only really get them in like the New England northeast region, where they're always talking the huge game, and they're like mob bosses. I think those guys are awesome, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to go to Philly. But yeah, it's totally unacceptable, and something needs to change because I don't really like what do you I mean like what are we doing here? And then the insistence that Alex Pretty couldn't have a gun. Do we not have a right to own guns? I mean, I don't. It's all quite absurd to me. And it seems as though the federal government's position right now is you can only exercise one of your rights at a time. So if you're out there protesting, you have to let the National Guard stay in your house, or you have to have a trial without a jury of your peers, because certainly all your rights do apply at the same time, not one at a time.
Yeah, I don't think it's playing well. That makes for good internet arguments and people to call these different statements by the FBI director and others stupid and out of line, and they don't understand what they're talking about. And I think on the internet, it makes for great debate, but I don't think that carries any water. You step out into normal society that's not inundated with this all day, every day. It sounds pretty ridiculous. So I don't know that the government has a lot of broad support on what's happening right now. But
they're too online.
Yeah.
They're just
and
too
you are
online.
not, and you are not anymore.
No,
so
I'm
you
off
can
Twitter.
speak for the people. Yeah.
I deactivated my Twitter. Not interested. Now, but like I'm the median voter. I'll tell you what, dude. We talk a lot about the median voter early on the show. I kind of get it. I kind of get like, if something's important, you'll text me about it, right? I mean, there's really like, what else am I doing? I'm finding out about like, oh, they move more tankers around Iran. Whoop-de-doo. I do it all the time, dude. Now this happens. So, I'll find out when everyone else does. And I don't really think there's any use in doom scrolling. Also, I just think Twitter's ruined. Ever since he monetized the platform.
Yeah.
Ever since he monetized it, it's just like, what are we even doing here, right? It's because it's just all vague posting and rage bait. It's like, what are we?
Speaking of rage bait, the rug. I've got an opinion on the rug.
Okay, yes. All right, so this is from
Megan
our
in.
interior designer expert, yes.
Yeah, my wife Megan chimed in. She thinks that we're trying to bait her, or that I'm trying to bait her.
Bait her?
But I'm not.
Does that mean she doesn't like it?
She said it fits in the right context. I'd say yes if the rest of the room vibes.
What does that mean? Like, do I need to have a safari theme?
There's a reason I don't do this stuff, all right? I don't know.
Well, so as a single dude looking for a rug,
put it up for a vote. And I think you should put it up for a vote. And
I will put it up for a vote.
And adhere to the results.
Adhere to the results. Speaking of adhering to a result, at the beginning of this, you may have heard a theme song or you may not have. But I'm having you know that I'm actually trying to figure out how much of girls want to have fun we can include in the beginning without getting dinged. Which I know, as everyone knows, copyright law is 8 seconds in the United States. We can play 8 seconds of it. But YouTube doesn't really play that game, if that makes sense. They pick it up and the rights go to them because they're not interested in, well, technically it was, 7.5 seconds or whatever. They're not interested in playing dispute here. So we're working on getting this done, but I already did a practice upload and we got flagged. So, so we're working on getting it done. If anything, we might just need to do, you know what the Super Bowl shuffle is?
Do I know what the Super Bowl shuffle is? Come on. Yeah. That thing's got to be copyright though. Right?
Well, it is, but
we are the Bears shuffling crew.
We could Super Bowl shuffle our theme song and we could just sing it ourselves. We get like a little studio midway between us here in Tennessee and Georgia. We do a little dance. We are the Unclassified Shuffling Crew. And maybe not that song, but maybe whatever we want to sing. That could be fun. It could be charming.
All right.
But now, speaking of rugs, big, what's big in the rug department? Also, can I just say this? When I've been looking at rugs, and I'm sorry I've brought a ridiculous conversation to this podcast, but folks, I've been reading about rugs for 3 months now. Not 3 months, 3 weeks now. I've been losing my mind. Every time you read more about rugs, well, I'm like a guy trying to figure out a rug for my apartment because I think it'll bring the room together. But really what I'm sick of is the echo in here. And so I've been reading about these rugs. And no offense to women, but you really have to be a woman to like some of these rugs, okay? And that is 100% true. because these are some of the ugliest things I've ever seen before in my life. But a big one that's big, everyone says you have to get a Persian rug. And I don't like them. I think Persian rugs are pretty ugly. But you know who makes Persian rugs? Iranians. And so that is where I was going with that. And so we will transition into talking about Iran and Preston. I mean, unless you want to talk about Minneapolis still, but you have any other?
No, let's get into it. We try to focus more, and I feel like the Minneapolis stuff's worth bringing up just because it's I think it's pretty important right now, and a lot of folks are understandably interested in what's happening there. Iran is interesting right now because we have surged assets to the region like we had, like I think more now than we had there during the 12-day war in June.
Mm-hmm.
And people for a few weeks now have been saying any day now, any day now, any day now. And we've for, I'd say probably, a lot of the movement's classified, but I'd say for at least a week, we've had enough assets in region to be able to carry out pretty significant sustained operations against Iran if we wanted to. Every day there's more moving in. But a big question here is like, what exactly are we trying to do? And I don't think we have a clear answer on that one. There's kind of a few different directions. The protests don't seem to be playing into this at all. There's two things that are not being mentioned: protests and regime change. And that's notable because, of course, the protests seem to have kind of led to this. And the most recent reports are somewhere between 20 and 30,000 Iranians killed. It looks like the regime has beaten that back. And we still get footage leaked out every so often. Most of that ends up being old footage from the start of the protests. So it doesn't look like we're trying to layer on top of that. Regime change also is not being mentioned. Now, I get the argument that, why would we say that? That doesn't seem like something we should be putting out there in the open. We did with Venezuela. Like, we had lawmakers left and right. You remember how many times Maduro was called an illegitimate leader? And all of the lead up to, there were Congress people going on talking about, just openly talking about regime change in Venezuela. So like, that was a topic there. It's not a topic here. This seems much more focused on getting a deal around the nuclear program, which technically is just a negotiation. I don't know. It's hard to dial in exactly what we're trying to get done here. The last I saw in terms of the demands that the United States sent over were the same that we've had essentially for multiple administrations. No enriched uranium, dial back the missile program, no support for proxies. Like, that hasn't really worked before. And like, to be blunt, the problem is not those policies. The problem is the Iranian regime. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't seem like we're focused right now on, this is part of the like, our strikes coming or our strikes not coming. I don't know what we're trying to get out of this at this point. I can tell you what I would like to get out of this, but I don't know that that's actually what the administration is pursuing.
So I fully agree with you. I have no idea what we're trying to do here. If the thing is because they were killing protesters, he says a lot of things, and often it's just better to ignore him, right? But he said they agreed to stop killing protesters or whatever, but they still did. And so now we're like 2-3 weeks removed from that now. So I don't really know what the plan is. It just seems to me like we're building up forces, and then we're like looking for a reason for a strike. And you're like, maybe it is about the nuclear program. Maybe. I couldn't tell you what's about to happen. And I couldn't tell you what is. And Trump keeps saying, well, I'm open. My phone's always open to Iran. But I bet they're probably having the same conversation we're having right now, which is, what are we supposed to call them about? Is it about the nuclear program? Is it about the protests? What is it? It doesn't really make much sense to me. Perhaps it'll happen tonight. I believe that was something I saw that Israeli officials believed earlier this week, that they were likely to happen over the weekend. I don't know, but it seems like we're a horse without a race right now. Is that an expression? Maybe now it is.
Yeah, There's a couple different things that I would keep an eye on in terms of the direction this might be going. First off is nothing happens. That's becoming harder and harder to get behind. Look, sending these amount of resources to the Middle East comes with a cost, not just the cost of like the dollar cost of flying all these planes across the Atlantic, but they're also not elsewhere. Like we just moved a carrier out of the Asia Pacific to the Middle East. There's strategic costs involved with this as well. So like there's a lot of money being spent to position these resources. However, one option is that nothing happens. Another one is that we are going to use military force to enforce a significant blockade and kind of shut down all Iranian oil exports. I would argue that the forces we have in the region is still quite a bit more than is necessary for that, unless we think that a blockade could lead to a larger war. But that's one possibility, some sort of essentially enforcing a blockade through the Persian Gulf. Another one that I think is probably what most people are looking at now are kinetic strikes, airstrikes and missile strikes against maybe the Iranian regime, maybe their missile and nuclear facilities. That would probably be done with the focus of trying to get to a deal. And that's where I kind of keep coming back is a blockade or a handful of military strikes seems to be focused on getting the Iranian regime to say, enough, what do you want from us? The last one is kind of a special operations type, maybe kind of under the radar type mission. I think going after Khamenei and his leadership directly would be a bit risky, but I do think the administration is pretty confident following that pretty flawless operation against Maduro. I wouldn't rule that out entirely. It's definitely riskier going into Iran to do that, maybe alongside Israel. No doubt Israel's penetrated the Iranian security apparatus pretty significantly. Maybe that's something. And with that, I would put, maybe special operations forces on the ground trying to really actually end the Iranian nuclear program and some of these facilities that we hit back 6-7 months ago. I'd say all on the table right now. Unfortunately, I'm kind of leaning towards symbolic strikes. A day, maybe 2 days of airstrikes against military leadership and nuclear facilities. And then saying we're waiting for Iran to come to the table to make a deal. I think Trump seems very focused on being able to list accomplishments quickly. And I think if he could get Iran to agree to negotiate or agree on paper to something, he would flout that as an accomplishment that nobody else could get done. And I feel like we could be pushing for that in a matter of a few days. So I don't like that. I think that's a pointless, it's a hollow victory when we've had the opportunity to make real lasting change. But those are kind of the different scenarios I see playing out right now.
I mean, I can see all of it. But like I said, I mean, there are a lot of options available. But like, if you had to rate probability of what they're trying to do with these strikes, and when you say symbolic, do you mean we're just going to blow up some things and say we're waiting for them to come to the table? I mean, I just don't really see any of this working because it didn't work last summer, right? So what do you think is most likely to happen here? Like in your bet, what do you think is in the mind of who's in charge of this? Marco Rubio, I think. I mean, usually that's the best guess.
Wickoff,
right?
Maybe Kushner. Who knows?
Yeah. What do you think is happening here?
Most likely is a symbolic strike, and you will have the internet erupting as to whether or not it was actually meaningful or not. We'll hit a number of their missile facilities to prevent them from retaliating throughout the region, probably go after some of their nuclear facilities again, and maybe even team up with Israel to go after a few senior officials within the IRGC. There's a lot of them were killed during the 12-day war, we should mention. It won't be after Khamenei directly. I think that would be a bridge too far. I don't think we'll actually do that. But we will then celebrate that we can do this whenever we want. If Iran doesn't come to the table, we'll be right back in ready to do it again. So we'll have the Pentagon celebrating another major U.S. military success because in all likelihood, we will hit a bunch of targets, won't lose a single aircraft in the process, at least based off of how the last iteration went. I don't want to downplay the risk to our service members because, of course, there's a lot of risk with this. But I think that type of symbolic strike, Tomahawks, fourth and fifth generation aircraft, we don't necessarily even need stealth fighters moving into Iran at this point. It would help, of course, but their air defense has been pretty hammered. And the symbolism there would be to show China and Russia and Iran that we can continue to enforce our will in some of these areas. It's just the outcome isn't actually going to be there. Like, we'll, again, to your point, we'll twist their arm a little harder to get to a nuclear deal, but I don't think we're getting there.
So this is more of like a technical question. Prior to the invasion, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the 12-day war, was the U.S. military aware that the Russian air defense that Russia and Iran were both using didn't work the way they thought it would? I guess Venezuela also used it as well. Were they aware that it was not cracked up the way it was supposed to be, and they just found out in real time with Ukraine and with Israel? Or have they always been very conscious that this stuff really just doesn't work?
Hard to say, because so much of that would have been, I mean, straight up espionage, right? Trying to get into the details of exactly what this can do, what it can't do. Based off of U.S. military planning, I would say that we have been assuming that they are very capable, very accurate, and very effective. And I would say both conflicts prove that they're not quite there. But, make no mistake, like, S-300s can still shoot down American aircraft and would. Like, you put a U.S. helicopter, try to fly one of those Chinooks that we flew into Venezuela in range of an S-300, it's going to shoot it down. Now, their effectiveness against our stealth aircraft, I think, has been proven rather ineffective. But yeah, I would say we probably had an idea leading into these. The Russia-Ukraine war opened that door a little bit more, and then the actual use of stealth over Iran probably sealed that for us. Again, though, this isn't a matter of like, now we can go wherever and do whatever. It's in that particular case, based off of those approach patterns in those conditions, we were able to bypass. That shouldn't be taken as a set rule across the board, no matter what.
That makes sense. And so do you see anyone coming to Iran's aid? I feel like it feels like they have a lot of spiritual alliances with a lot of nations. Really not a lot, like 3, maybe 4. But it definitely seems like nobody's willing to vouch for them. And Richard Nixon said something, because I don't know if do you know what the Nixon Foundation is?
I don't think so, no.
So I am obsessed with this channel. They're like the Nixon Presidential Library, but they're like trying to retcon it like he was a victim. But they're always posting these clips of him talking. And he's very interesting to listen to. He's very on the nose. He's very wise, very informational. I could listen to his interviews all the time. But he says that the Iranians are not suicidal, they're intellectuals, right? And so you would think, given that, and I do agree with his assessment, right, that the Iranian regime is draconian, but like they're not suicidal. They're not like this ridiculous regime the way other dictatorships are necessarily. And so why do you think it is that Russia, China, I guess Venezuela no longer, but those two are not willing to stick their nose out for Iran?
Well, I don't. So we should mention that Iran put out a note that there is a joint Iranian, Chinese, Russian military exercise in the Gulf of Oman set to take place like today, which is pretty bold. That would be like NATO deciding to hold. I don't know. I do believe they have some ships that have been, if I'm not mistaken, they had some ships in not the Red Sea, but around the Houthis recently, 1 or 2, but maybe not. Technically, a joint exercise could have people on land or just on the radio, or could be just in a command post or something. So let's keep in mind. But that's a pretty bold move to do that. That is, I mean, not exactly 1-to-1, but kind of like NATO deciding to hold a military exercise on the border with Belarus in February of 2022. Like, something's getting ready to happen. And to willingly put your military forces there, even if they're not directly engaged, like it opens a lot of doors for a mistake. You know, what happens if Russian ship or a Chinese ship thinks that U.S. aircraft is targeting them and they shoot it down, right? Like it gets pretty real pretty quick. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition, if anything comes of that. But in terms of why nobody's standing up for Iran, I think it's lack of ability and lack of desire. So China and Russia is who you're pointing to right now. Let's be real. Like Russia's pretty occupied. What exactly do we think that Russia is going to do to try to prop up Iran? I mean, we have seen already in the last 2 years, 2 key Russian allies fall much faster and without really any Russian response. I mean, I'm putting Venezuela in that camp, but like they were able to do nothing to prevent Maduro from just being taken out of his bed in the middle of the night. And then you've got Assad holed up in Moscow playing video games right now. Like neither one of those cases was Russia able to intervene. And I think that's probably what a lot of people expected, given how bogged down they are in Ukraine. China, I think we should look at it the same way they're looking at Russia, like the Russia-Ukraine war. They'll issue some statements. We don't like this. We want peace. But at the end of the day, they're just going to bide their time. Like nobody really expects China to deploy military assets anywhere at this point outside of their own immediate zone of influence. So the conversation has long since passed that China might back up Russia militarily. Like that's not even a topic anymore. And if they're still not even considering that overtly with Russia, it's hard to imagine they do anything with Iran. They'll just sit back, they'll wait, they'll bide their time. So yeah, Iran's in a tough spot. Well, no, the Iranian regime is in a tough spot right now.
That definitely does seem true. Do you know if the Iranian regime has reached out to the United States for any kind of talks?
We've gotten mixed signals on this one. So Trump continues to put out like, this is their last chance. We hope to make a deal. We've got this big armada flowing their way. The statements coming out of Iran are pretty nationalistic at this point. We will defend our land. Any steps taken by the United States will be met with force, but kind of mixed, where I think it was their foreign minister said, yes, we have open communications with the United States, but there are no ongoing negotiations, which kind of reminds us a bit of the 12-day war, where there were kind of talks ongoing and we kept referencing like, it's time to make a deal. And Iran was like, wait, what? So I feel like we're using different terms. It does feel to me like we're trying to say that we're talking this through, but we're not actually talking it through. Which, look, to be fair, like you mentioned this earlier, like what is there to talk through? Iran has not changed their stance. So like whether we say we're talking or not, something needs to be done if we actually want them to adjust their position.
It's kind of like Greenland, right? Where it's like, well, we're going to talk about it. Well, there's not anything to talk about. They said no. So you either got to put up or shut up, right? So
little to talk about that critical aspect of U.S. national security is no longer a topic, which is crazy. It lasted 2 weeks.
Well, it really did. And you knew it was sealed when he said, well, so are you going to reach a resolution on it? And he said in 2 weeks. And you go, okay, there's the kiss of death. It's always in 2 weeks, right? So, yeah, I don't know what we'll see here with Iran. If you said we're going to strike them tonight, that would be, what time is it in Tehran right now? So it's at 6:25. So right now we're recording at 9:55 a.m. Eastern time. So that would mean
midday here.
Midday, you'll see action be taken because the U.S.
There have been a couple explosions in Iran today.
Yeah, but I'll say what, if there's a place where things randomly explode all the time, it is Iran. I just see, and obviously not random. Who knows who's doing what, but I feel like things have been randomly exploding there now for 6 years. Which must be frustrating.
It feels like there's more to this. Now, whether it's a local group or Mossad or someone Israeli or even U.S. linked, we saw this around the 12-day war as well, where like the strike stopped, and then for like 6 days there were a lot of gas fires in like IRGC officials' apartments. It's like, like, how did that gas fire blow out the entire second floor of that building that where 3 IRGC generals happen to live? So like, yeah, there do seem to be a lot of random fires, but I wouldn't write it off entirely.
Yeah.
Because the fires tend to happen a lot more around direct military action. It's like those guys were targets. They didn't get killed, and then their apartment blows up. I don't know.
It is always fun to follow a dude who lives in Iraq on Twitter, or anything. And because all of a sudden you kind of know what's about to happen because he goes, I hear jets overhead, and you're like, oh, okay, something's about to happen. But you're also like, this poor guy, dude, he's just stuck in between the volley, man.
Just watching it happen, yeah.
Just watching it happen, and then you hear Iraq go, we didn't say our airspace could be used. And it's like, well, nah, you're kind of the airspace is kind of a PvP zone. So, what are you going to do about it?
It's a free-for-all, yeah.
Yes, but if you had to make a guess, do you think we strike Iran tonight?
I won't boil it down to tonight. I do think we'll see military action against Iran. I think I think military force is justified for what it's worth. I think we should use what we have in our arsenal to try to top the Iranian regime, not put U.S. boots on the ground. I think with enough resources and enough support, we could help foster a free Iran after the fact, probably with some of our allies in the Middle East, ideally with some of our allies in the Middle East. I think we should do that. I think what we're going to see is more of a symbolic strike that will flex the U.S. military muscles, won't necessarily change anything on the ground, but it'll be a PR win of sorts. And the rationale for the strikes will start to come out after they take place.
I think we're kind of asking for a mess there. I mean, when the protests were going on, I would have agreed. Now I'm like, I don't really know how you're going to do that. I don't think our allies in the Middle East should have any part in reforming Iran because I think you're just asking for trouble there, right? I mean, Iran's always been the outsider. They're not Arab. They're Persian. They're a different kind of Islam, right? Aren't they Shia? And the Gulf is Shiite, or maybe I have it flipped.
Iran is predominantly Shia. A lot of the Gulf is Sunni.
So, thank you. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think keep the Gulf states out. I don't really know what other country can help stabilize it. I guess Syria is kind of on the outside too, isn't it? So
let me push back on that real quick though, because I don't think rebuilding requires foreign intervention, foreign boots on the ground. There's so many other things that would need to be done. How about just protecting the country and keeping other people out, keeping foreign interference out, saying, we're going to provide the buffer so the Iranians can help stand up their own society. One of the challenges we had in Iraq was the porous borders with Iran and with Syria. And this is not the reason that Iraq really struggled post the invasion, but it certainly didn't help. Then foreign fighters were flowing in from the West and the East to fight Americans and in some case kill Iraqis, like specifically target Iraqis. They took advantage. I mean, same thing that we saw in Syria. Right? More foreign people flowing into the country is not what is going to help. So I think the regional powers there could be able to play a role in kind of locking down the borders in a good way of saying, let's make sure that no bad actors get in, providing the top cover, maybe providing the financial assistance to help the government get back on their feet. I mean, when you look at the number of sanctions the government is under right now, there's going to need to be some sort of reform to the oil industry to make sure it can continue to operate in today's economy. That type of stuff, I think, could be facilitated without, Saudi Arabia dictating the type of government in Iran. It's a little hopeful. I got it. But I think a lot of countries in that region would benefit from a stable and more free Iran, and they would have an incentive to do that. So that's more of what I'm saying when I say some assistance, from outside assistance, to help them get on their feet. But look, we got a long ways to go because the Islamic regime is still very much in charge there.
Well, let me throw you an actual, I think, U.S. security concern. Iran still possesses nuclear materials. And we know that when the USSR fell, there was a huge black market that spawned up for nuclear materials. there are like rumors out there that there are like still black market nuclear weapons. We know that ISIS tried to buy one, but it was unclear if they were being scammed or what, right? We also know that there was nuclear material being sold. There's the famous story of the U.S. diplomat in Kazakhstan who went to get his car repaired, and the guy saw he was American. He goes, "Oh, would you like some uranium?" And the diplomat's like,
Yes, I would.
"What?" He takes him to the shed down the street, and he like opens it up, and here is the yellow cake and all it's worth. And that begins. I forget the operation name, but the U.S. government then, I believe, exfilled most of the uranium from the former Soviet states, and they paid them for it. And they kind of just try to keep it out of hands, but not all of it was able to caught. So I do think there's a legitimate concern that if you destabilize Iran and there's nobody to take over immediately, you do run the risk of uranium. I don't know if I don't know if the correct term is weaponized or active uranium,
Enriched,
whatever
yeah.
you need. Yeah, enriched. That's correct. Enriched. That's what I was looking for.
That's one of them. Yeah, I mean, it gets weird. Yeah. A lot of times.
I think you run the risk of that potentially falling into the hands of, whatever's going on in Afghanistan.
Anyone.
Yeah,
It loses
really anyone,
when you lose control of it. Yeah, anybody, technically. I got you. I think that's fair.
Yeah, so that concerns me. But it's also like, I don't know, can you be sure that you got all of it? Maybe you do have to send U.S. forces on the ground. I know the United States has a plan to steal Pakistan's nuclear weapons, or they did, if you remember that during, I believe it's called the Shadow War, right? In 2008 to 2010, when NATO and Pakistan were low-key in a war with each other. They had the plan to steal their nuclear weapons because they were driving them around in white vans in city centers because they caught wind of this. So they said, well, we're just going to drive them around the city. Good luck getting them out of a van. And it's like, yeah, good luck getting them out of the van. Yeah. So maybe they have a plan for it. I don't necessarily know, but certainly the people in the U.S. military have thought that through, right? So, or maybe they haven't. Maybe they're going to listen to this and they're going to go, "Oh shit,
that was something we forgot to plan for." Yeah.
Why didn't we think of that? Yeah, no. Certainly they thought about it. So we'll see what happens there. But we do have some questions from the viewers. So this one is from a member, K Dog Diggity. You know that song No Diggity from the 90s?
I do, yeah.
What a bop, dude. All right. So they ask, who do you think will win the showdown? The NRA or Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller?
You lead off here. I don't know that I'm fully up to speed here, but I'll chime in.
So here's the thing. I mean, I actually don't think the dispute's between them. I think the dispute's between the NRA, Kash Patel, and Donald Trump. Right. What many people miss is that the Trump administration, they're not like conservative. They're not like conservatives in the sense that like these guys are like New Yorkers, dude. New Yorkers and Californians, they don't really own guns. They're like a different kind of conservative than most conservatives. So like that's why they're making these comments about guns, right? They are not your average Republicans. So ultimately, I think they'll back down from their stance. As for Stephen Miller, that guy needs to go. He is an issue. He is straight up a villain. So he is I have no qualm saying this. He is a Nazi. People say you can't say it because he's Jewish. I'll tell you what, only in America can you be a Jewish Nazi. Stephen Miller proves that. So even in America, our white supremacists aren't even whites half the time. So, it's the beauty of this country, but Stephen Miller's got to go. What do you think?
I think the NRA wins that one. I think personally, I think there's a lot of room for us to address gun issues here in the United States. I have a lot of guns, love guns. And I do think there's probably a lot of things we could do to make this a safer country and a better, like, I'm not in the camp that nothing around the Second Amendment can ever, ever, ever be touched. That said, what they've been putting out recently is kind of like it doesn't exist. And there's a lot of Americans on both sides of the aisle that are just laughing at that. Like, you are ridiculous. So it seems like something that we can get Democrats and Republicans on board with at the same time. So I feel like the NRA is going to win that fight. And the way they're going to win that fight is it's just going to stop being a conversation. And and the administration won't comment on it anymore. Because to your point, whether they knew it or not, that is a landmine they just walked right into, and I think they'll back off.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next one's from Jake the Snake. He's a member. He's also from Denmark, which makes the second question pretty remarkable. And so he asks, is the war material supply chain finally beginning to turn in Ukraine's favor? Second question, do you think Bill Belichick was snub out of a first round Hall of Fame spot, or do cheaters get what cheaters deserve? Take it away, Preston.
I'll take the first one. I a little bit, but not a lot. We've definitely seen some European nations step up. We've seen Ukraine bring a lot of that stuff in-house. The trip from just a couple weeks ago, one of the things that blew me away was the amount of 3D printers that they're relying on, where they can just produce so much of this material right there. So I don't know that it's that the supply chain is in Ukraine's favor as much as Ukraine has adapted to their new way of fighting the war. Big picture, I would say it, I don't know. I was going to say it is trending, but the problem is, like, the United States has kind of stepped away from that, right? And I would include the United States as a component of that. We got such an incredible manufacturing base and can produce so many of these weapon systems. If we were still providing what we were a year or two ago, I would say yes. But the fact that we have completely backed away, I would say that still leaves a gap where Russia's still churning stuff out left and right. And I don't know that Ukraine yet has the advantage there. In terms of the Belichick thing, I'm actually not following that at all. He seems like he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't know. I feel like probably one of the best coaches ever, right?
Yeah, he didn't get in. He didn't get the votes. And some of the voters said, well, they wanted to punish him for Spygate or whatever from like 2005, which everybody was doing at the time, but he got caught. So, whatever. I do think he was snubbed. I just think it's ridiculous. So it means when Brady goes up, is Brady also not going to be first ballot? He's the greatest quarterback to ever play. So I don't know. Anyways, this next one's from B West. He's a member. Does Iran get invaded before the markets open?
I feel like we already addressed that a little bit.
We did, yeah. This next one's from Cody Chipa. What does the purging of China's top general mean for Taiwan? Some say it delays an attack, where some are saying it encourages China to act faster. What's your take?
You want to start this one?
No, I have no idea. I think probably it delays it. Who knows?
Probably not much of an impact at all, I would say. I think we put China on more of a timeline than they necessarily have. And we love to say, like, in 2027 or by 2032 or whatever it might be. I think what we've learned from China over the last few decades is that they take their time, tend to have more of a longer term view. And so maybe this delays it, but essentially I think they're going to take that action when they feel like they're ready. Yeah, I don't know that it has all that much of an immediate impact.
This next one is from Jesus Zenjas. I'm definitely saying that wrong. Technically it's Jesus, but I assumed his name's not G. I assume it's Jesus, right? I mean, maybe it is Jesus. Anyways, he says, what do normies usually get wrong or don't understand about geopolitics?
Well, you're the one that's off Twitter now.
Well, yeah. Now I'm a normie. I'll start. So I think normies underestimate the strength of the United States military, because they often, they all believe in Russia's military capacity. So I think they underestimate the strength of the U.S. military across the board. And I think that stands for partisan lines. If they're not fully paying attention, I think they think things are more even than they actually are, and they just really aren't. Now, another normie take, though, is people underestimate the importance of allies, because a lot of rhetoric in America is like, we're, the best ever, yada, 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 and they don't really, they think we can get by without allies, and that's just not true. In fact, I would say the U.S. military would not be as powerful as it is without allies, because now you have a huge armada. You got 11 aircraft carriers, but where are they going to dock? Not Europe, right? They can't dock there. Where do you have all these aircraft? Where are they going to go? You can't strike Iran without your bases in Europe. So, so I think they underestimate how important allies are to U.S. power projection and the U.S. economy as a whole. and they underestimate the strength of the U.S. military. Things really, whether you agree with the administration or not, whether you like the United States or not, it's just there's really no comparison right now. Maybe China is a peer adversary. We won't really know till it happens, but like there's just no comparison right now. They are the military hegemon.
I would say underestimating or not appreciating how intertwined everything is around the world. I get the impression that the term the U.S. being the world's policeman is kind of viewed in a negative sense, and that we're just doing that like out of the kindness of our heart. We're just spending our money around the world because like we want to do it. We want to step in and help these guys do better and stop the bad guys from doing bad things. And it's a difficult thing to articulate how stability in Pakistan helps the United States because it's like a 17th order effect. So it's not like on the average person. It's not like shame on them for not knowing it. It's really hard to explain that, I think. And in turn, a lot of times it's not explained. But I would say that we operate abroad, whether it's militarily, economically, or politically, to 9 times out of 10 to serve our interests at home. And it has a direct impact on the quality of life, the standard of life that we have grown up in. And I think connecting those dots sometimes is hard to do.
I actually fully agree. It is hard to explain the idea of like what we get out of collective defense, right? And like even if you explain like how Perun does it, or if you go to my channel and you watch my great video on how NATO's alliance works, but like we are a security exporter, right? And so when we guarantee another nation's security, that doesn't actually cost us anything, right? And especially when you're in an alliance with NATO, if you guarantee Germany, France's, and the UK's security, and they also guarantee each other's, you're lessening the burden on yourself, right? And so, in fact, what you end up doing is you get a bunch of people willing to protect you, and since you're the biggest dog in the game, that serves you more than it actually serves any of them. So it's hard to explain that to people who just aren't really in the loop, because I guess there really aren't any other real life comparisons to it. But
it's not an easy thing to explain either. Like it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also just like, I don't know. Like some of these people you just want to slap. You just want to say like, do you really think
I'm talking
Eisenhower,
about trying to make things easier to explain, and you're like, I don't know, just hit them.
It was just like, do you really think Eisenhower and Truman were doing this out of the goodness of their heart? Do you think they really were just like, all right, we'll just pay for everyone's security? You really think that's what was happening here? Like, come on, dude. We reshaped a world that follows the rules that, oddly enough, very specifically benefit us. It didn't happen by chance. Okay. So, it's hard to drill that into people's heads. But usually, if they listen to this podcast, they get it by 20 minutes in because we're so good at explaining. This next one's from Andrew W. He says, Preston, do you see any large-scale Ukrainian counterattacks or offensives happening in 2026? Ben, that's me. Do you see Trump facing any bipartisan pressure to be stronger against Russia and Ukraine or on the world stage?
So for me, no, I don't think you're going to see, well, let me parse this out. You're going to see some Ukrainian offensives, but they're not going to be what most people think. It's not going to be about regaining territory around Pokrovsk or in Zaporizhia or even up north in Kharkiv. I think what you're going to see in terms of a Ukrainian offensive is a medium to long range strike campaign that we have not experienced quite yet. So at times we'll see like 100+ drones flying from Ukraine into Russia. I think that number is going to spike, and they're going to start seeing successful results against areas that maybe haven't been hit before. Multiple Russian airfields, manufacturing facilities, start seeing areas maybe even in central and eastern Russia starting to get hit. I think, big picture, looking back on this war 10, 20 years down the road, you might refer to it as Ukraine's drone offensive. But I think that's the direction they'll take. There's no good art. Yes, Ukraine would very much like to take back some of their territory. They're not in a condition to do that right now at an acceptable cost, but they can inflict significant damage on Russia, and I don't think Russia's prepared for that. So I think 2026 is the year of Ukraine's drone offensive.
The answer to your question to me, Here's the thing. The primaries are beginning soon, right? And that is for non-Americans is when Republicans, if you're a Republican representative, you have people in your own party running against you, right? And often if you go against the president or whatever, he'll run someone against you. So as soon as the primaries are over, I think you're going to see a lot of bipartisan consensus when it comes to teeing off on Trump because his approval is so bad right now on everything that they are going to have to give him a loss if they want to retain their seats, right? So I think you will see that. Yeah, I think you're already kind of seeing it in the Senate and the House. I think you'll see it more. Who knows? The House is rarely allowed to vote because Mike Johnson's off hanging out with Nicki Minaj and doing whatever other weird stuff he's up to. But our last question here, and this is for you, Preston, and I'm interested in your answer as well. This is from the B Knight, as in like knight, like in shining armor, right? But it's a B in front of it. So he says, imagine is it Pretty or Pretty? It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
Imagine the Alex Pretty scenario occurred in your time deployed with personnel under your command. What is the proper de-escalation procedure? What is the right PR move? And would you tarnish your personal honor, in parentheses lie, to cover lives under your command?
Oh, I'll take the last one first. I've never been in a situation where I've had to lie to cover the tracks of somebody in my command doing something illegal. So I have not done that. I hope that I would not. I'd like to think the moral fiber is there to stand up, but of course we're talking hypothetical at that point. All right, apples to oranges when talking about a war zone. So in Afghanistan or Iraq, for instance, you're surrounded by people, not everyone, but enough people there that day in and day out are actively trying to kill you. Some of them are doing that by blowing themselves up. Like they put a vest on, they walk up close to you, detonate the vest, killing people. You can't compare that to Minneapolis. Like there's no aspect of that. Even if you argue that some of the people want to do harm to ICE, to pretend like they're facing the same threat as our soldiers walking the streets of Baghdad is ludicrous. So the threat being posed is not comparable. So in a lot of places, and this depended on the unit, it depended on the time, it depended on the country, it depended on a lot of things, but we generally did not want locals approaching our formation without being able to see clearly that they weren't wearing a vest, because we had an incident. I mean, well, every unit around this time, there was a farmer that walked into the middle of a U.S. formation and set off his vest and killed 3 of our soldiers. And at a distance, he just looked like a normal guy. So you could not allow them at times close to you because of that threat. That, of course, is not a threat in Minneapolis. We also had much tighter security around that kind of stuff. Like when we say you can't get in between our troops, like you would put the gun in the guy's face to make sure that he didn't do that. And I don't know we ever had an incident where somebody was killed because they didn't understand or didn't follow directions and they turned out not to be a threat. It was pretty well understood. The gun goes up, goes in your face, the guy backs away. We had wrongful deaths with airstrikes, and there were full investigations. The ones that I was a part of came back to a malfunction. I think I've talked about it here before, but a malfunction of the bomb, and it detonated 5 or 6 kilometers off target. But there was a full investigation, start to finish. If somebody was, I know there were stories at the beginning of Iraq and Afghanistan about guys carrying drop guns. And the idea there was if you accidentally killed an innocent civilian, you would drop this AK-47 to then say, hey, look, he definitely had a gun. I never experienced that. I was never in a unit that carried that or even suggested that kind of stuff. But I can't speak for the entire military. Let's see. I feel like I'm unintentionally bouncing around here a little bit. In terms of de-escalation, again, dependent on the theater and dependent on the time, but there was I want to say shout, show, shove, shoot was something we were taught. So as somebody approaches, say, your checkpoint and they're not stopping, you shout. As they come closer, you show, as in raise the weapon to say, I'm getting ready to engage. Then shove. Maybe it was shove, then shoot, or shove, then show. Either way, then you actually apply force to push them back. And then the last result is firing. In my time, they didn't really teach us about warning shots because people had died via warning shots. So by the time you pulled the trigger, the intent was to kill. And in all of my interactions in Afghanistan, the Afghans backed away at that point or stopped. It's hard to look at what happened in Minnesota and think that it followed any of that protocol. And had that happened in a war zone, there would have been an investigation to find out what happened. I would imagine. I don't know what the repercussions would then be and how that would have been viewed, but it would not have been glossed over, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. Even in a war zone, it looks like both of those cases, the escalation of the use of force was very, very rapid, far rapider than it should have been.
So I have a question from there. So by the time you get to Afghanistan, suicide bombing is well known at this point. But was there an adjustment period for U.S. forces to get used to suicide bombing, or did they know of it going into it? Did it completely catch them off guard? Like, how steep was the learning curve there in combating it and dealing with it and the existence of it?
Changed over time. So it really started in Iraq with foreign fighters. So if you go back to like 2003, I don't know that there were, and like it was not in Afghanistan for a long period of time. It was not a Taliban.
Right, it came from Iraq to Afghanistan.
Yeah. So it changed based off of theater of operations. They saw how successful it was, especially under Zarqawi, kind of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, showing how brutally effective they could be. So they started being used more in Afghanistan. At the end of the day, there were far more in Iraq than Afghanistan. So there wasn't as much of a concern about those in Afghanistan for a while. I'll get the date wrong, I'm sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if the first like notable series of suicide bombings in Afghanistan was probably 07, 08 timeframe. Whereas in Iraq, they were a couple of years prior to that. So there was a learning curve, but by the time they started happening in Iraq, by and large, U.S. forces were treating all interactions under the assumption that that could happen.
Wow. Yeah. It definitely seems like something. Yeah. When that starts happening, that doesn't seem good, obviously.
No, but real quick, to put this in perspective, like we had people that would walk up to you and detonate their vest to kill you. And sometimes it was women, and sometimes like all sorts of awful cases like that. And we still had soldiers that would not open fire on somebody walking near them. They still, it's terrifying, but they still walked up that escalation ladder without killing people. Even when, I mean, we in my battalion specifically, we had 2 suicide bombings that I think killed 12 people total. And even the day after that, there were no Afghans shot for approaching U.S. forces. You moved up that ladder and you stopped them short of needing to use violent force. So, even in situations where that's happening, our guys, 18, 19-year-olds sometimes found a way to control themselves and work through that escalation ladder.
It is interesting how disciplined the U.S. military is compared to the internal security forces of the United States. I would argue that most federal agencies are pretty restrained. It's just these ICE and CBP guys that seem to be out of their minds in terms of, aggression as a whole. So, all right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think that concludes this week's beautiful episode. Yep. Remember to become a member. And we have our chats we're going to be uploading. The issue that we're struggling with here, folks, you have to let us know what you think. Would you rather us upload them to YouTube as like unlisted, and we'll have to figure out a way to get you a link? We can upload it, I guess, as a members only, but then it shows it to non-members. They can't see it, right? But it shows it to non-members, and then it hurts our click-through rate, which is like a big thing. So would you rather be on a Patreon or unlisted, and then we figure out a way to link it to you? Let us know what you think, but we have to upload that. And So thanks for being a member. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. And we will see you next week. Probably. Well, maybe tomorrow, depending on what happens tonight. So, all right. Later, y'all.